All right, welcome back to PDF 2021. The next session is called Now or Never. Uday Dandavate, founder of SonicRim, will be in conversation with Lauralee Alben, founder of the SeaChange Design Institute. Lauralee believes that design is ready for a sea change, and quite literally so. She's worked with the Environmental Defense Fund, P&G, and Apple in building innovative cultures and humanizing technology. Uday Dandavate is a familiar face. He's a design activist, poet, and ethnographer. Uday recently published an evocative collection of poems, A Window for a Home Without Walls. Over to you, Uday and Lauralee.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, sorry, it's evening, isn't it? Good evening, everyone.
It's evening for us.
I'm so excited to be here with all of you.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here too. Pune Design Festival is an old relationship of mine. Been there many times. I was so happy to be able to attend Shashank, Tripathi, and a little bit of Chetan's presentations. Particularly, Chetan's presentation reminded me how important voices in our head are. It wasn't Chetan who was speaking to me, but the voices that he created, because they are a part of our memory. Also, Shashank's presentation is all about what I have been curious about, collaboration. But one word that did stand out in my mind as he was speaking was inclusion. And that is a good segue into my presentation, because inclusion, what it means is you cannot separate a part of your past, present, or future. They are all a part of you in this moment and now. So you cannot wish away what was a part of your history or your memory, nor can you just be obsessed with an ideology or a vision. You have to work your way from now. COVID has taught us that. And I think this is a good time for me to read my poem, where the theme of this conference is expressed in a poetic way. I remember the day Ashish Deshpande contacted me and said he wishes that I collaborate on a dialogue. And the theme was now. That very night, in the middle of the night, I wrote this poem. So may I please put the image up? Is the image up?
Not yet. We're just working on getting the image up. Nikhil and the Airmeet team, can we have the image up? Just give us a second. Sorry about this. We're struggling with multi-city technology with you in the US, me in Mumbai, and the team in Pune. We're having a few slips between the cup and the lip.
Sir, actually, I displayed this slide, first slide, and also second slide now. Anyway, let me try that again. Please confirm once it's safe.
Yes, please display the slide. I'll confirm to you when we can see the slide. Confirm. We can see the slide. Go ahead with it.
Yeah, not this one, the next one. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my poem now is an inspiration from your theme. If I try to hold on to it, it slips away and becomes my memory. If I try to prepare for it, it sneaks away from under my feet. If I try to live in it, it unhitches me from my purpose. I wonder, if I can't hold on to it, prepare for it, live in it, what purpose does now have? I found the answer in a state of stillness. When I'm free of intentions, expectations, my senses reach out to the universe. When I'm alone in silence, I'm sensing. In that state, I hear the footsteps of emerging future. I smell the aroma of my memories and discover the state of timelessness. In that moment, I feel present and prepared for the future. I'm free from anticipation, fear, and doubt. And now stays with me. So that's my poem. Lauralee, please over to you.
Oh, I'm always so moved by your poetry. In fact, Uday, it was your poetry that brought us together. And this conversation that we're inviting all of you into is a conversation at the about the evolution of consciousness, at the intersection of poetry and design. You know, when we've been talking for these past months, and now we're going public with this conversation, what I have realized is that design and the challenges that are summoning designers now are requiring simultaneous shifts from the personal all the way to the planetary. And it's now or never for us to hear the footsteps of our emerging future, just like you wrote in that poem. And it's so inspiring to me. You know, these are extraordinary times. They're cataclysmic. We have crises happening everywhere. And we're also married to those crises by compassionate action. And so really, we need to understand that we're in a crucible of a transitional era, that as a new world is birthing, an old paradigm is dying. And evolution is providing a counterpoint to evolution. Extinction, evolution, both are dancing back and forth. So if ever there was a time when everything was called into question, it's now. And if ever there was a time that everything is possible, it's now. And if ever there was a time for design to show up, it's right now. It's now or never to use design as a way to engage in the profound nature of paradigm shifting and the pragmatic nature of problem solving. And so we have endless opportunities to create together. Let's take the pandemic. Let's take COVID-19. Let's take the social crises. Let's take social injustices, economic inequity, the climate crisis. It's wide open. There are limitless possibilities. What we're doing here is offering you healing poetry. What about designing regenerative products and restorative processes? Let's begin with a really big definition of design. In SeaChange design, we talk about design as the conscious planning and meaningful action that creates relationship with humanity, nature, spirit, and time in service of life. The short of that is design creates relationship. Design is a continuum in the way that I think about it. On one hand, there's products and services and communications and environment, and it sweeps up to designing with systems and processes, and then it goes all the way over to designing shifts in consciousness and ways of being. What do you think about that? Uday, you span that spectrum.
It's been a very interesting journey for me. I began, just as you talked about design, as in my past, it was about creating artifacts, images, designing for people. But over a period of time, as I began to become less obsessed with what I create for people, I realized design lives in our consciousness. Design lives in our imagination. And that is always under construction. Design is not something that you create and hand over to someone. It's something that we collectively share in our consciousness. And more we are aware of how life affects us and how we affect life, we as designers create this space, we co-create this space in which life emerges, the dance of life emerges in harmony with past, present, and future. Time becomes immaterial. What you create becomes immaterial. What becomes more immaterial is how you see yourself in relationship to others and in relationship to life.
Wow. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. You know, I was thinking about a project that we worked on at the SeaChange Design Institute with the Environmental Defense Fund. And they came to us because they said, we have a research project and we need to look at the promise and peril of manufactured seafood. And I was thinking, oh, disruptive technology. And they said, yeah, so disruptive that we think it's going to impact every aspect of life. So we would like you to help us with your SeaChange design process to figure out what the system boundaries are. It's so big, we can't see them. And the dynamics and the results, the scenarios that are needed need to come from, I said, surfacing the strategic questions. Yeah, and when we engage with the top ocean scientists and stakeholders from policy to human health to ocean, we found that this disruptive technology was going to affect absolutely everything, including our planetary support systems. We surfaced questions like this: will manufactured seafood actually redefine what it means to be human? Will this tissue grown in a lab actually deepen or destroy humans' bond with the ocean? Because if it does, we're toast. Looking at those kind of questions is what designers can do. It's what we are designed to do. Like Uday says, is that we are in motion. We are in flow with consciousness, being responsible for the ethical and moral decisions that we are creating and designing and their impact in the world.
I would love to intervene here and add something to what you just said. I live in Silicon Valley, where there is obsession with disruptive innovation.
Yes.
I work with engineers and technologists who are passionate about bringing into reality anything that's possible with their ability to write code for it. They're looking for the code in the computer screens. And what I realize, and we all realize over a period of time, that all these inventions and disruptions that technology is creating in the world, while it's creating conveniences, it's also making us blindly follow the creations of technologists who are less mindful and conscious of the connection between humans and life, humans and the ecosystem. And therefore, we have seen some of these technology products have created some humongous human societal problems. And it's time for us to humanize technologies, expand our consciousness, so that we are not just working against goals that are set by what we can do, but by a deeper understanding of what we can be.
Yeah, because we are not algorithms.
Yes.
We are not. And this reminds me of our early years in the 90s, when we were bringing design to software. We were defining the field of interaction design, and we were consulting with Apple on customizable appearances for the Mac OS. And what was so obvious to me, that unless we actually bring our sense of vision and discovery and curiosity and love to the work that we're doing, technology will actually do the opposite of humanizing us. And it has to happen the other way, as you say, Uday, that we have to humanize technology.
And towards that end, I would say the current situation we are in, I would say it was an inevitable stage in evolution of human place in ecology.
Mhm.
COVID has, at least for the first time in our lifetime, given us a message that you cannot think in the limited space of me, my family, my community, my national identity,
Right.
but you have to think of me in relationship to the universe and the ecology and look at the implications of our actions and our imagination on that universe.
Exactly.
So expanding our identity as an extension or a part of the universe. I was inspired by Charles and Ray Eames' the movie, The Powers of 10, where he demonstrated that in the microcosm of our bodies and the universe of the abundant universe of infinite life that surrounds us, the shape is the same.
Yeah.
So that's what inspired me to write the poem The Universe, which is now translated into music by a student of music. And then I turned it into a music video. And I guess that's what we need to become. We need to let every creative urge we have emanate from our humble recognition that we are only a small part of the universe.
And in acknowledging that
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm no poet, but if I may add a little poetry to this session, I haven't written this poem. I read this when I was a school child, and your reference to the powers of 10 inspired me to recite this poem. I'm not a good reciter, so I'll try. So the poem goes like this. It says, that very law that molds a tear and bids it trickle from its source, that very law holds the earth a sphere and guides the planet in their course.
Wonderful.
oh,
Great, Suresh.
Sorry.
Suresh, you can just stay here and continue to have a dialogue with us.
Over to you, Lauralee.
Okay.
Sorry.
well, you brought up love in that, and that is precisely the point, isn't it? And I think what we're talking about here is we're spanning the universal to the intimate is really that we have to tend to the now of these tender times. We have to tend to our hearts. We have to look inside because, like you say, there is this separation and this isolation and this grief and loss that we're going through now during this pandemic is calling to us. It's the chaos of raw materials that we designers can actually bring into a new form. And I think that form is the form of interdependence, which is actually the reality, isn't it? Everything, everyone is all interdependent. We all belong inside of oneness, and we all need to raise our consciousness. It's really time to create new ways of living and doing and being.
So, to your point, Lauralee, I would say we are in a perfect time. The pain and suffering of this past year has created a cathartic experience, many of us, at least those who are sensitive to what's happening around us. When I saw these images of migrant labor walking hundreds of miles to their home, such something that Shashank referred to in his presentation, it melted my heart. It made me feel my pain and suffering and isolation was nothing compared to how they were feeling, how removed they were feeling in pursuit of dreams that brought them very little joy, but a lot of pain. And now in this moment of crisis, the only place where they feel they belong and where they could draw hope and energy from was the place they left behind. And they were going back there because they were realizing that regardless of where you look, where you aim, you belong where you came from, and your journey is defined by both where you came from and where you want to go. So in that moment, we began to write poetry. I began to write poetry, and that's where I met you. And I think this is a good time for us to even explore what does poetry mean in terms of design practice. I don't think many designers have explored poetry as a medium to inspire imagination, to expand consciousness, and to create a sense of one's place in the universe. So what do you say?
Mm-hmm. What is life but poetry? That's how our souls speak. What if all that we created, whether it was an artifact or it was a new environment for compassionate care in hospitals for people who are dying. I was just talking to my sister who's on night shift. She works in a little hospital in Brownsville, Texas, as a nurse caring for COVID patients. And she was just telling me, I just called to tell you because, of course, I was awake. I work 6 nights a week, 12-hour shifts, tending to these people. And she said, I have to go. I love you. Please bring the message of love to the people that you're talking to. Sorry. And she said, I have to go because I need to tend to a dying man now and his family. Where's the poetry in that? That grace, that transition, that sacred transition that we make. How do we bring poetry to what we do? Which is just simply to say, how do we show up as whole human beings in the work that we do? How do we actually presence ourselves in our bodies, with our minds awake, with our hearts open, and with our souls deeply connected, caring, creating, and choosing? How do we do that? In SeaChange Design, we spend a lot of time doing that in coaching and in consulting, in culture change work. And I think that at this time we have to tend to who we are in survival. We have to tend to the survival states that it's not just humans. To think that it is hubris. There are orcas who carry a dying or a dead baby 1,000 miles for 17 days. You may have heard of that. There are forests and mother trees grieving the loss of them in our California fires here in Australia. Their grief and loss and all of this is societal, it's ecological, it's spiritual. We need to tend to that, because when we tend to that, then we can thrive, then we can honor that, and we can emerge together into this place of oneness where compassion is the realm. Design thinking for me just doesn't go deep enough or wide enough. We can't just stop at empathy. And believe me, I was one of the pioneers of user-centered design. It's not enough. What needs to happen to really have participatory design and to co-design the evolution of this human experiment on this planet is for us to truly, genuinely show up as wholehearted human beings and go and presence what is spiritual in the world, however you define that.
Thank you. I want to take what you just said and take it to the imagination of the audience. For all of you who are listening to us here, for a moment, I want you to close your eyes and try and remember the first poem that was recited to you, maybe by your grandparent or one of your parents or somebody at home. Whatever you remember, or even the poems that you don't remember, but when you hear it being narrated to somebody, it brings back your memories. It brings out a sensation in you. We all have grown up with poems being recited to us. The tunes, the words, and the rhythms of those poems stick with us. It doesn't really matter who wrote those poems. I have poems in Marathi that bring goosebumps to me. I don't remember who wrote them. I'm sure Tamilians sitting here, Punjabis sitting here, they all have a poem that was recited to them, and they probably recite those to their children. Those poems have a direct access to our heart. They have the ability to provoke our imagination, our understanding, our consciousness, our dreams, our sense of who we are in this universe. Even before we learned to crawl, we heard poetry. It's a part of our evolutionary process. And therefore, one day last year, when I climbed up a hill looking at San Francisco from a hill, a feather flew by. I tried to catch it, and it flew away. I was disappointed. I came home that night. I woke up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. with the realization that I was that feather. That feather, which was a reality that eluded me when I was awake, it became a metaphor when I was asleep. And my consciousness was creating, my subconscious was creating a consciousness that elevated a feather into a new awakening and a new awareness of how to interpret my experiences, my relationship to the universe, which may sound paradoxical, but the answer to who I am was given to me by a feather floating in the air. We have answers to the rules of the universe that are set. Nature has set the rules that are meant to be healing. They're meant to be regenerative. Technology is not healing. It's not regenerative. We have to learn ourselves, our identity, our purpose, our behaviors from biomimicry. And that's where I've realized that there is a design of life and life's design. And the answer to that can come from poetry that emerges from us if we let our mind settle down from obsessing about the past, present, and the future, and just live in the moment and let it dawn upon us. Back to you.
Oh, that unstuck feather, that poem. Everyone just go buy his book and read that poem. And you know, I think, look, this may sound like we're urging everyone to enter the land of Lala, of woo woo, or something like that, but it isn't. I mean, you had your universe lesson from a feather, and I had mine on the eve of my younger sister's funeral, when the same sister who's a nurse said to me that night, I'm a nurse and Denise was a social worker. You're a designer. How are you using design to serve people? You know what? I didn't have an answer. I was 24 years old. And that question became the question that I have lived my life out of. And now it's expanded to how can I use design to serve life? But each one of you has a feather or has someone who's telling you, showing you, mirroring to you your purpose and who you are in this life. Each one of us is receiving messages all the time that are calling us into unity, calling us into action from a deep and true place within us. And I think the way we find that is exactly where you were, Uday. You were standing in the now. And that's where our inspiration is, isn't it? It's in that sacred still point where we come back into relationship with being, our being with a capital B, and with all of life. We really, our souls give design wings to soar. And there's a butterfly effect that is amplified by each blessed one of us. Whether we like it or not, every action, every thought we have is creating a butterfly effect out there in the world, affecting far beyond what we can even conceive of. Who knows what will come from this conversation and all of us here gathered together? And with that comes our personal responsibility to reckon and reconcile with the questions that are summoning us now. The way that I like to talk about it is we need to come into a state of design being. When we're in a state of design being, we are present, aligned, connected, and flowing on all four levels of our being. From our body to our mind to our heart to our soul. When we're in that place, we can say, I am here now. I am here now. And I can join. It actually, can you cut back to me just for, no, don't leave the image. Yeah. You see that double infinity loop? It's like that. We can join this beautiful, beautiful flow, and we can start co-creating with humanity, with nature, with spirit, and with time in this eternal, beautiful flow that is infinite. And the transformations that we create, that we co-create together with all that is, with all that exists, can actually generate a life-revering world for everything. That's what we call design consciousness. It's an intentional way of being. It's arising from the contextual awareness that everything is interdependent and interconnected, and everything is in its natural form flowing.
Just a time check. Suresh, how many more minutes do we have before question and answer?
Another 10 more minutes before we go into Q&A.
Wonderful. Great.
Why don't we talk for another 5, and then I'll read Design Consciousness, and we'll open it up.
Yes. I do want to give one quick example of poetry in practice of design.
Good.
Currently, we are doing a project at SonicRim, which is about understanding how people manage their health and trying to develop our clients, innovate a more integrated, more meaningful, more impactful caring service. We have gone through a traditional design research process. My team and I are working on the synthesis of insights. And we have a set of design principles and frameworks, as we always do, that we are going to present to the client. But I have decided that my team is going to present the findings and possibly the PowerPoint. But I'm going to step away from that, and I'm going to recite a poem that brings together all the understanding and awakening that I've had of how people feel about their wellness, how they manage their wellness, and how they see themselves in a moment that is sowing the seeds of, I wish I could do better, into a poetry that would not tell my clients what to do, but inspiring them a vision and a visualization of what is possible. And that takes me to a question that I asked you, Lauralee. What do you think, in the universe of experts, what is the core thing that a designer does? And I remember your answer, but I'm going to let you say it because you said it very poetically. And people would love to hear that from you.
Design is the conscious planning and meaningful action that creates relationship with nature, spirit, humanity, and time in service of life. If you need an example of what that is and someone who lived through design consciousness, let's just talk about Gandhi.
Wonderful, because this is a perfect, because I really like that you brought up Gandhi, because I have always believed that Gandhi was the best designer I've ever considered as my benchmark and my guiding light, because he understood human conscience, he understood imagination, he understood metaphors, he understood communication, and he understood participatory design. And what he created was not a template to tell people how to gain freedom, how to live a new way of living, but he provoked an imagination where every human being who followed his message had something to work with to create their own visualization of what freedom meant to them, what a new way of living meant to them. And they were able to live that dream in that moment using some of the tools that he created, be it charkha, be it the salt march, or be it khadi. All of those were less of products and they were more of metaphors that served a larger sense of awakening and consciousness that he created in people's imagination. And I think that's where, so I always, even in my introductory video that I posted yesterday, I said, we live in the land of Gandhi and Buddha. Gandhi because he's a great designer, and Buddha, I love Buddha because I like his curiosity. And my mission as a designer poet is through poetry to create a sense of curiosity, compassion, and creativity in every individual who reads my poem, and empower their imagination with the sensation that they feel using curiosity, compassion, creativity as the tools with which they can participate in creation of the life. So that's what I see. One thing that you did say to me as in our earlier conversation is that designers help people see possibilities in the eye of their mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most powerful thing. We can develop stories and artifacts and poetry and structures in which people can actually see and feel what's possible now.
All right, I'm going to jump in at this point. I have a few questions that I need to ask you and a few questions from the audience. Let me first ask Lauralee. Lauralee, many of the people in this call and this conversation today went to design schools largely inspired by the modernist and postmodernist schools of thought, Bauhaus onwards. Right? And SeaChange marks a sea change from that school of thought. So if you were to encapsulate the core philosophy of SeaChange Institute of Design, what would it be?
A sea change, all you really need to know is that we can design sea changes if we're willing. A sea change is a positive, profound transformation. So all you have to do is put that kind of a transformation together with design, and you can address anything that needs to be changed for the better. I came out of Basel. NID and Basel School of Design. Armin Hoffman is the link to that. That's why I'm so excited to be here bridging America, India, and Switzerland together. But there's a long lineage of before that, and now here we're manifesting a new one. And what I'm doing is taking what I learned in Basel and at Rhode Island School of Design, and that how to communicate the essence of a meaning, the evocative nature of design, and bring it forth in a way that is transformative. But to put that in the hands of the ones who want it to change. So yes, it's all still the same thing. It's all about seeing and feeling and being.
So, Lauralee, you're a poet, a philosopher, and a designer. And you work with a company like Apple, for instance, which thrives on planned obsolescence. They make us throw away perfectly good phones every year and buy a brand new phone that we arguably don't need. Does this cause torment in you? Is there sort of an irony that lives within you?
No, there is a revolution that lives within me. And the older that I get, the more I'm very clear which projects I will take on and which ones I won't. I've lived long enough now. And it's not that I am set for the rest of my life. It's that I'm making conscious choices about how I use the power and the gifts that I have. And that's what we all have to do. At Apple, I walked in there on that frontier in 1990, and I said, this is not enough that we're talking about bits and bytes. This has to be about changing people's lives for the better. And I have always done that in whatever projects I've taken, whether they're corporate or nonprofit, from the Hunger Project, working to end hunger, to the clients and the individuals and the leaders that we work with, to instill in them their own power and the universal power coming through.
Suresh, may I just add to what Lauralee just said?
Go ahead, Uday.
I have learned through my own, just like Lauralee had her journey and I had mine, and we just intersected. I have learned that what we really need to do is ask the right questions. I think the most successful designers and even businessmen are those who ask the right questions. I have managed to close deals more by asking the right questions than by providing how smart solutions I can generate.
Mm-hmm.
If our clients feel that they can actually visualize themselves in a change process, in an alternate fuzzy space that is possible, that invites them to experiment and without fear, they're likely to talk to me. They're likely to engage me. And that's where what Lauralee said resonated with me. Back to you, Suresh.
The next question. Yeah, go ahead, Lauralee.
So what I hear you saying is we have to be intentional, and that's the first cycle in the SeaChange design process, is intention. And we actually have designed a process that people, whether they're within a corporation or they're designing their life and their leadership, we've designed a process where intention is the pivotal basis of any SeaChange that needs to occur. And then we move into what the context is, and then how we connect the dots in relationship, and then how we generate a flow of results that are life-revering. Okay. But it all begins with intention.
All right, Uday, next question for you. You spoke early on about how you were once a designer of artifacts, and you've moved beyond that. But the reality of the world is we are going to need more artifacts and many more of them. Electric cars being one example. If they're more fuel efficient and better for the planet, somebody is going to have to design a whole electric car ecosystem. So my question to you is similar to what I was saying. How do you reconcile the need for more artifacts, and actually more artifacts can make the world a better place, versus your conscious drive or intentional drive to reduce the number of artifacts that you touch and use?
So I do understand that we are entities of flesh and material, and live in a world which is a material world, and that's going to last only as long as we live, and we allow the world to live. But the truth is, artifacts are only like a prop in a theater. Audience doesn't go there to look at the props. They go there to experience the act. And in the act of life, unless we have the right story, the props mean very little. But I have also been a mime where I've told a story without any props. So I think what we need to do is shift our focus from creating the props to developing the story, the storyboard, and the narrative and the act. And let the props emerge from the people who participate in the act. And to be very precise in terms of professional practice, more and more my clients value me not because the designs I give them or the narratives I give them or the vision that I give them, but because at the end of every project, their teams feel so passionate and purposeful that they go back to their drawing boards and start creating artifacts that expand their imagination, that expand their vision of what's possible in a playful way. And they want to come back and play with me in the sandpit of what we create. So what we are doing is we are not building artifacts, we are building a sandpit in which artifacts will emerge.
And while you're building the sandpit, I'm on the beach and working the water.
Okay, Lauralee, next question for you, Ashish Pandey. He says, how does a young designer and going to work with the poetry that lives within you?
It's such a beautiful question. And I really acknowledge all of you who are out there starting out. Thank you. We need you. This is your future. You're the ones who will be designing it. Uday and I, we're laying the bridges for you, but you're the ones who are walking over it. We have a SeaChange design curriculum that we teach at San Jose State here with students from around the world. And my partner, Andrea English, has now facilitated over 1,000 seniors graduating clear of their life design, clear of their intention for their lives, the power of design, and the way coffee, or your I don't know, what do you do now with computer? Pushing pixels, building wireframes, I don't know, whatever it is that's, making code. In the end, there doesn't need to be a reconciliation. It's that separation in consciousness that's blocking us. What about whatever it is you do, you bringing your true self to it?
I have one more answer to that.
Okay.
When I started my career, there was no chief design officer anywhere. Today, we see chief design officers. One of them is going to speak in your conference, Mauro Puccini. I see our opportunity is to work not only towards that position, but create a position of chief imagination officer. Somebody who prods, provokes, inspires an entire organization to move in the society, shape the society purposefully, meaningfully, and mindfully. And I think that's the role designer has, and the tools we have of communication, tools we have, the props to enact some of that imagination, place it in people's lives, are our power. I've always imagined that if you look at making of the world, economists have become politicians and planners. Engineers have become politicians and planners. Finance people have become politicians and planners. Why have designers not played such a strategic role in planning of cities, societies, future? Because we fear. We have limited the scope of our influence to the artifact. If we shed fear and we become great storytellers and poets and imagineers, much like poets and movie makers and authors, we can actually begin to influence the society with a more inclusive, collaborative approach, and actually cultivate curiosity, compassion, and creativity in every individual.
And we can invite everyone to co-design with us. Suresh, I wanted to make sure that I'm able to give my gift of the design consciousness poem too before we end, if that's okay.
All right, it's now time for that poem, Lauralee.
Please bring up the screen.
Can we have the butterfly screen again? RK and Nikhil. The butterfly image.
While they're bringing up, I'm going to do what Uday did, what he says he does in his gatherings, whether they're at work or otherwise. And I thank you. And I am, and I'm going to read, I'm going to close this beautiful session with my gift to you. This is the first, I want to speak to your souls. And this is the first public reading of a poem that I wrote called Design Consciousness. So I'd like you to let your imaginations go, and you can look at this image if you like, or you can close your eyes. But please just settle in, open your hearts, and let me speak soul to soul with you. Design Consciousness. If I could sweep you into the great cosmic embrace, into the great arcs of co-creation as they curve out and back again, like the hair whorls at the center of your blessed head, and the horsetail cirrus painted across the cerulean sky, we would come to the still point, where even time takes a breath, and remember when spirit was inseparable from stone. Soaring out, we transverse the galaxy where Gaia hums in harmonies only awake ones can hear. And each day the sun star burnishes its image into analemmas with eternal love poems only those who stand fixed long enough can see. While the ocean basins surrender to the ceaseless gyres of water's imagination, only the most daring explorers can sense. Once more, we find ourselves at the nexus, where we glimpse our own gloriousness reflected in the shimmer of a butterfly's wings. Rejoicing, we veer around the vortices, riding the dragon's tail back to its alchemical source, where Sophia emanates her visions into vocabulary so vast, it takes an eternity to fathom the forms she creates. Impulse cycle into birthing seeds and celestial bodies, while Kairos and Chronos take turns minding the wheel of destiny. Over and over, we merge into the rising coil of consciousness, breathlessly pausing, whispering, here. Questing, we loop through evolution's whirls, meeting ancient earthbound architects building stromatolite communities, and Emiliania Huxley's microbial blooming beckons Sky Woman to bring down her medicine of sweet grass and compassion. Songs of our ancestors' lullabies and war cries echo in the Valley of Giants as Celtic monks intricately illuminate the Book of Kells, and a Tibetan sage weaves one red thread into an endless knot, with us at the center, ourselves memorizing the motion of unity. Transcending, we flow through the toroidal energy field, visiting the pulsing stars that know us by name, and the gardens where Hildegard and Herod water the flower of life, while in a distant future a newborn's mouth encircles a breast. As the light ignites our imagination, all that is blossoms into possibilities, and the portal of our hearts opens into a landscape of love. We transform in the point of convergence, arms raised in exaltation, knowing now design serves both as vessel and revelation.
Thank you. That was very moving. All right, that brings us to the end of this session. Lauralee Alben and Uday Dandavate, thank you very much. As you can see from the audience reaction to the love that you're getting a standing ovation that's lasting for quite a while. And lots of designers deeply moved by the combination of poetry, philosophy, and design that you presented today. Thank you very much, and we wish you both all the best in your poetic and philosophic endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, before we end this session, we have a design quiz coming up next, and I'm going to show you a little teaser of that quiz now. I'm going to share my screen. All right, if you can see my screen.
Yes, sir. Screen
All
is
right,
visible.
that's the first question, and I'll read out the question for you. Let me go into full screen mode. In the 1950s, the government of India, with the help of the Ford Foundation, invited Charles and Ray Eames to visit India. They then presented the India report, which led to the creation of what? It's a really simple question. First answer wins. Remember, this is the easiest question. The questions are going to get more complex than this. Right? That is the right answer. It resulted in the creation of NID, or the National Institute of Design. Here's the next question. Designed by D. Uday Kumar, this symbol is derived from the Devanagari letter R or Ra, and has two parallel horizontal lines that are supposed to represent equality or balance in the economy. What are we talking about? Again, really easy question, just to warm you up for the design quiz. Do remember that we have prizes to give away in this quiz. We have an XP pen, which is a digital sketching tablet, courtesy of XP pen. Here's the answer. It's the rupee symbol. All right, I know that was easy. Now let's get a little more complicated. Yukio Ota designed a green man running through a rectangle in 1979. What does this symbol signify? That's your third question for the quiz. And if you didn't know that Yukio Ota designed this in 79, now you know. And here's the answer. Quite simple. It's the exit sign. All right, that's the design quiz that's coming up next. Thank you, Uday. Thank you, Lauralee. If you'd like to stay on and participate in the design quiz, you're most welcome to.
I'll stick around for a while.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the
Thank
end of this session. Thank you. Hi, moderators. You need to end this session. Thank you, Lauralee. Thank you. Sorry, you're briefly on screen again for a